Ever heard of a house so haunted it became a media sensation, drew ghost hunters like moths to a flame, and then, well, let's just say it had a rather fiery exit?
You must be talking about Borley Rectory.
We are plunging headfirst into the legend of Borley Rectory, often dubbed the most haunted house in England.
Kind of cracking yarn, that one. It mainly unfolds in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, over in Essex, England.
Right, Essex. And this wasn't some ancient castle, was it?
No, no, not at all. It was a proper Victorian mansion, actually, built in 1862 for the local rector. Had a bit of that Gothic style, you know.
Gothic, yeah. Moody.
Definitely, it gives it that atmosphere.
And get this, the land itself seems to have had a bit of a dramatic past. Apparently, a previous rectory on the very same spot went up in smoke back in 1841.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So, trouble from the start, potentially.
Makes you wonder if the ground was just a little overheated from the beginning, doesn't it?
Well, it's a thought. And,
Hmm.
even shortly after the new rectory was built, locals started whispering about odd things.
Like, what? Straight away?
Pretty much. Footsteps with no feet attached, that sort of thing. It's like the house was setting the stage early on.
Right, like it had his own spectral sound effects guy working overtime.
Yeah. But the really captivating stuff, the kind of story that really sticks, goes way back. We're talking 14th century.
Okay, medieval spooky stuff. What's the story?
It's this local folklore, you see, about a forbidden love, a monk from a nearby monastery and a nun from a local convent.
The classic doomed romance plot.
Exactly. And naturally, their affections were, shall we say, frowned upon. Big time.
I bet. So they got caught.
They did. The poor monk ended up hanged.
Ouch. And the nun.
Her fate was particularly grim, according to the legend. They bricked her up, alive, inside the convent walls.
Braked her up. Jeez. Talk about a bad day at work.
It's a truly chilling image, isn't it? And importantly, this legend was floating around long before the 1862 rectory was even a blueprint.
So the story predates the house itself.
Absolutely. And even before the first rector's family, the Bulls, moved in, locals knew about the nun's walk in the gardens.
The nun's walk.
Yeah, a path where her ghostly figure was supposedly still seen wandering.
Okay, so you've got this seriously spooky backstory just hanging in the air around the place.
Pretty much. And wouldn't you know it, even in the rectory's early days, people claimed to see a ghostly nun just sort of drifting about.
Just the nun. Or was there more?
Oh, there was more. Definitely more. Reports of a phantom coach, too.
A phantom coach?
Yeah.
Like horse-drawn.
Yep. Complete with headless coachmen, apparently,
Yeah.
rattling around the property, especially at night. Seen and heard, according to the tales.
Headless coachman. Right. Okay. And inside the house.
Mysterious footsteps were a pretty regular complaint, plus all sorts of unexplained creaks, bangs, crashes, bumps in the night, basically.
Classic haunted house stuff.
Yeah.
And the first family there, the Bulls, they experienced this.
That's right. Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull, the first rector in the new house, and then his son, Harry Bull, who took over after him. They both reportedly dealt with this.
And how do they take it? Terrified.
Well, here's a funny thing. Harry Bull, the son, apparently he found it all rather amusing.
Amusing. Ghosts and headless coachmen.
Sort of, yeah. He even built a little summer house, the story goes, specifically so he could sit out there and watch the ghostly nun take her evening stroll.
No way. Just chilling, watching the ghost.
Apparently so. Maybe with a pipe, who knows? Talk about being unfazed.
That's one way to handle it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Shows how different people react, right?
Exactly. What terrifies one person might just be, I don't know, Tuesday evening for another, but things definitely took a more unsettling turn later on.
Okay, when was this?
This was when the Smiths arrived in 1928. Reverend Guy Smith and his wife.
Right, the Smiths. New family, fresh start.
You'd think so. They probably pictured a nice, quiet life in the country rectory. But almost immediately, Mrs. Smith found something.
Something weird.
You could say that. A human skull.
A skull. Where?
Just there. Wrapped up in brown paper. Apparently found in a cupboard during cleanup.
Okay, that's not a standard welcome basket item. You'd think that would be a sign to, maybe unpack somewhere else.
Right. And it's fascinating how often a specific event like that is pinpointed as the moment things really kicked off, paranormally speaking.
So finding the skull was like a trigger.
That's often how it's presented, yeah. Like it unleashed something that was maybe already lurking there.
And it did it. Did things get worse?
According to the reports, yes. Big time. Suddenly, those strange lights people sometimes saw, the phantom footsteps, that ghostly carriage, they all seemed to go into overdrive.
Overdrive. Like what?
We're talking full-on poltergeist activity,
Ugh.
doorbells ringing all by themselves, objects moving, the classic haunted house starter pack, really.
Wow. So what did the Smiths do? Just live with it?
Well, they were understandably spooked by all this commotion, so they reached out to the Daily Mirror newspaper.
Ah, the press gets involved. That always ramps things up.
It certainly did, and that decision brought a really pivotal character onto the Borley stage. The paranormal investigator, Harry Price.
Harry Price, right. A name you just can't avoid when talking about vintage ghost hunting. So the Mirror sends him in.
They do, and wouldn't you know it, Price starts reporting all sorts of dramatic happenings almost immediately.
Like what? What did Price see? Or claim to see?
Well, he reported stones and even a vase being chucked at him, seemingly by invisible hands.
Thrown at him. Okay.
Yeah, and apparently the Smiths' poor daughter got mysteriously locked in a room with no key on the inside.
It's almost as if the ghosts knew they had an audience.
Or perhaps Price knew how to put on a good show.
That's a crucial point to consider, isn't it? Price's involvement immediately introduces the possibility of things being, well, let's just say embellished for dramatic effect.
Definitely something to keep in mind. The Smiths, anyway, quite understandably freaked out by their experiences and the growing media attention, only stuck it out for about a year.
Can't blame them, really. Skull, flying vases.
Yeah.
Who moved in next?
Then we have the arrival of the Foysters in 1930. Reverend Lionel Foyster, his wife Mary Ann, and their young daughter Adelaide.
The Foysters.
Okay.
And how did they find it? Quiet down a bit.
Quite the opposite, actually. This period, according to the ghostly gossip, is when things went from spooky to downright terrifying. This is seen as the peak of the reported paranormal madness.
Really? Worse than the Smiths' time.
The accounts from the Foysters are certainly the most vivid and, frankly, aggressive.
Aggressive how?
We're talking serious poltergeist antics, smashed glasses, windows shattering for no reason. Marianne even claimed she was physically thrown out of her bed.
Thrown out of bed? By what?
By unseen forces, apparently. She also reported being attacked, even slapped. It sounds like a rather unpleasant living situation, to put it mildly.
Sounds less like a rectory and more like a spectral boxing ring. Yikes.
Doesn't it? But perhaps the most talked about phenomena from their time were the automatic writings.
Automatic writings, you mean like
Yeah.
messages appearing?
Exactly, just appearing on the walls or sometimes on scraps of paper, and often specifically addressed to Marianne.
What did they say? Anything coherent?
Well, that's debated, but some seemed like pleas for help. Things like the rather direct Marianne, please help get, or slightly more religious-sounding phrases like Marianne, light mass prayers.
Messages to Marianne, asking for help. Weird.
And what makes this particularly intriguing is that some accounts suggest these writings materialized in real time, like right in front of witnesses.
Or you mean people saw the words just appear on the wall?
That's the claim. Imagine seeing that. It's the kind of detail that really makes the hairs on your neck stand up.
No kidding. And the Reverend Foyster, what did he make of all this?
Well, Reverend Forster himself was apparently quite the diligent documentarian. He supposedly logged around 2,000 separate spooky incidents during their stay.
2,000. That's a lot of spooky.
It is. He also apparently tried exorcising the house multiple times. Gave it a good go.
Did it work?
Spoiler alert, the ghosts, or whatever it was, were not impressed. The activity reportedly continued.
So even exorcism didn't help. Wow. How long did the Foysters last?
They endured about 5 years of this relentless, well, ghostly onslaught, seemingly. Then they, too, decided enough was enough and moved on in 1935.
Can't say I blame them. 5 years of that. So the house is empty again.
Not for long, because then Harry Price, never one to miss an opportunity for some first-hand investigation.
He moved in.
He didn't just move in, he rented the whole shebang.
Rented the most haunted house in England. Okay, Price was committed or something.
Committed, yeah. And he brought a posse, didn't he? Like a paranormal reality TV show waiting to happen.
A posse. How many people?
He set up shop with a rather ambitious team of 48 volunteer researchers.
48. 48 people trying to live in and investigate this house.
Picture it. Almost 50 people camping out, all trying to capture evidence of ghostly goings-on. Talk about a crowded afterlife.
Must have been chaos. What did they focus on? What methods did they use?
During their residency, they focused a lot on seances, trying to have a nice chat with the resident spooks using things like a planchette.
Like a Ouija board thing?
Sort of, yeah. And apparently, they got some rather talkative spirits.
Oh. Who supposedly came through. The nun.
Two main spirits supposedly made contact, according to Price's reports. The first was claimed to be Marie Lair. That's the name they gave the nun from the old legend.
Marie Lair. Okay. What did she want?
She supposedly claimed she was stuck, sort of in limbo, until her bones received a proper Christian burial.
Ah, the classic unfinished business trope. Find my bones.
Pretty much. And the other main spirit,
Who's that?
a rather dramatic-sounding entity named Sunix Amurs.
Sunexamiras. Sounds exotic. What was their deal?
Sunix Amurs apparently made a rather specific and ominous prediction during one seance.
Oh, yeah. What did they predict? More poltergeists.
Something bigger. Sunix supposedly predicted the rectory would burn down that very night.
Burn down. Wow. Did it?
Not that night, thankfully, for Price and his 48 researchers packed inside.
Okay, phew. Dodged a fiery bullet there. But Sunex wasn't done, right? There was more to the prediction.
Yes, the spirit also apparently predicted that the remains of a murder victim would be discovered in the ashes after the fire.
A murder victim. Not just the nun's bones. So, 2 bodies now.
That was the prediction, yeah. Talk about setting the scene for some serious spectral drama.
Definitely amps up the story. So the fire didn't happen that night, but it did happen eventually.
It did, yes. Not immediately, but about 11 months later, in February 1939.
What caused it? Was it Sunex finally making good?
Well, the official story involves the new owner, a Captain W.H. Gregson. He reportedly accidentally knocked over an oil lamp during unpacking.
Accidentally. Or maybe not so accidentally, given the prediction and insurance possibility.
But perhaps not so accidentally, depending on who you believe. That's certainly been suggested.
And during the fire itself, any last-minute ghost sightings?
Of course. What would a dramatic fire be without one? Some onlookers claim to have spotted a nun's figure in one of the upstairs windows as the frames took hold.
You'd think she'd have better things to do than watch her old haunt burn down. Maybe get out.
You would think. Anyway, the house was pretty much gutted. Toast.
So that was the end of Borley Rectory, the building.
Essentially, yes. It was eventually demolished completely in 1944. And interestingly, the bricks were apparently salvaged and used for the war effort.
Really? So, in a strange way, the haunted history literally became part of the rebuilding process after the Blitz.
A slightly ironic end, isn't it? But the tale doesn't quite end with the fire and demolition.
Oh. What else? Price wasn't done, was he?
Not by a long shot. Harry Price, ever the resourceful investigator, seized the opportunity presented by the ruins. He decided to excavate the basement.
Why? What was he looking for?
He claimed he was on a mission to fulfill the prediction, or perhaps the nun's request from the seance, and find Marie Lair's long-lost remains.
Following up on Sunex Amir's prediction, too, about the murder victim. Or just the nun.
Primarily focused on finding the nun's bones, according to his public statements, fulfilling her supposed dying wish for a burial.
And wouldn't you know it, he found something, didn't he?
He absolutely did. He dug up some bones in the cellar ruins.
Human bones. Were they identified?
Well, the official story, Price's story, is that a pathologist conveniently on hand confirmed they were the bones of a young woman.
It's human, yes.
A young woman. So potentially the nun.
That was the implication. Price heavily pushed. And these bones were then given a proper Christian burial in the nearby Liston Cemetery in 1943.
So, case closed. Nun's bones found, buried. Ghost rests in peace. The nun's walk could finally be nun-free. End of spooky story.
Well, not so fast. Here's where the plot thickens considerably, and the skepticism really starts to creep in like a ghostly draft.
I had a feeling it wasn't going to be that simple. What's the catch?
The catch is, there are conflicting accounts about those very bones Price found.
Conflicting how?
2 cardinals who were actually involved in doing the digging at the time later swore blind that the main bone fragment they unearthed wasn't human at all.
Not human. What did they think it was?
They identified it as a pig's jawbone. A pig's jawbone? That's quite a significant difference from the remains of a medieval nun, wouldn't you say?
You're not kidding. A rather crucial discrepancy, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And this, I guess, leads us straight into the million-dollar question hanging over the entire Borley Rectory saga.
Which is?
Was it genuinely haunted, one of the most supernaturally active places ever recorded? Or was it all a rather elaborate, well, let's just say, something a lot more down to earth than it seemed?
Precisely. And to start untangling that, maybe we should take a closer look at our star ghost hunter, Mr. Harry Price himself.
Good idea. What was his background, really, before Borley?
Well, it's worth noting that Price wasn't exactly your detached, objective scientist type. Far from it, actually. He was a stage magician.
A magician? Like pulling rabbits out of hats?
Pretty much. A member of the Magic Circle, known for illusions and stagecraft. And he had a bit of a reputation even then for, well, hoaxes and pulling pranks.
Hoaxes? Like what?
He was tangentially involved with the whole Piltdown Man hoax, for instance. And he was known, among some circles, for staging ghostly photographs and even fabricating supposedly ancient artifacts.
Okay, so a bit of a showman, maybe even a trickster. That certainly colors his involvement, doesn't it?
It certainly makes you pause and consider his motivations and methods, yes. Which makes you wonder about the timing of everything at Borley.
How so?
Because here's a key piece of the skeptical puzzle. There's hardly any credible written evidence of anything truly spooky or out of the ordinary happening at Borley Rectory before that 1929 Daily Mirror article.
The article that brought Price into the picture.
The very one. Funny how the really dramatic stuff seems to kick off right when the media and a famous paranormal investigator arrive, isn't it?
Funny peculiar, maybe.
Yeah.
That lack of earlier documented events is pretty significant.
It is, from a skeptical perspective. And when you dig a little deeper into those earlier Bull family stories, you find potential alternative explanations.
Like the nun legend.
Exactly. Take that story of the nun being bricked up, the one that supposedly gave the Bull family the creeps and inspired Harry Bull's summer house viewing spot.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, it turns out the Bull family owned a novel by the author Rider Haggard. And this novel contained a storyline strikingly similar to the Borley legend, including a nun being walled up.
No way. So they might have just borrowed the plot.
It's possibility, isn't it? Coincidence? Perhaps.
Mhm.
Convenient for building a local spooky legend. Definitely. Suddenly that chilling tale sounds less like genuine local history and maybe more like a spooky book club bleeding into reality.
Interesting. Okay, what about the Smiths? The ones who found the skull and called the mirror. Their experiences seemed pretty intense.
They did, but later reports suggest their reasons for leaving weren't just about ghosts. They apparently also stated the house itself was in really poor condition, bad plumbing, generally run down, practical reasons.
So maybe the ghosts were just the final straw on top of a leaky roof?
Possibly. And as for that skull Mrs. Smith discovered,
Yeah, the trigger.
later analysis and local history suggested it was most likely the remains of someone who died during a plague outbreak back in the 17th century. The grounds had been used for burials back then.
So not a vengeful spirit's head, just old bones from a known burial site.
Seems plausible, not necessarily a souvenir from a paranormal entity.
Okay, so maybe the early bumps in the skull have pretty mundane explanations, but what about the really wild stuff? The Foister period. That sounded pretty convincing. Aggressive poltergeists, Marianne getting attacked, those writings.
Ah, yes, the Foister incumbency. This is where Marianne Foister's own perspective, which came out much later, becomes rather illuminating.
Illuminating how? What did she say?
Well, years later, she claimed, some say, confessed that many of the incidents reported during their time were actually staged.
Staged. By who?
Either by her husband, Lionel, perhaps with some encouragement or direction from Harry Price, who was in contact with them, or even by Marianne herself.
Wait a minute. Marianne staged it. The supposed victim admitting she might have been the one causing the ghostly chaos, or knew it was faked.
That's what she later suggested, yes. She hinted at doing things herself, perhaps consciously or even unconsciously, or certainly knowing that Lionel was faking things. It throws a huge spectral spanner in the works.
I'll say, why would they fake it?
Here's the kicker. Marianne also admitted, quite frankly, to using the ghost stories and the general chaotic atmosphere as a convenient cover.
A cover for what?
For her ongoing affair with the lodger they had living with them, a man named Frank Peerless.
An affair. So all those bumps in the night, mysterious happenings.
Suddenly have a much more terrestrial explanation, perhaps? Secret rendezvous, attempts to distract the Reverend, maybe ways to explain noises or absences. She also later stated quite clearly that she herself never actually experienced anything genuinely supernatural at the rectory.
Wow. Okay. That changes things significantly. And what about those automatic writings, the messages to Marianne?
Yeah, those seem like pretty solid evidence of ghostly communication, didn't they?
They did sound creepy.
Well, according to skeptical analysis, the content was often quite illegible, almost scribbled. The interpretations like Marie Lair or specific pleas are seen as very dubious, possibly wishful thinking by Price and Foister.
So maybe not clear messages.
And critically, the appearance of these wall writings conveniently coincided with the timeline of Marianne's affair. Plus, let's not forget, they had a young toddler daughter, Adelaide.
What about the daughter?
Well, Marianne herself noted that Adelaide was an inveterate scribbler, always drawing on things.
So ghostly messages from the beyond, or maybe just toddler art combined with distractions for an affair.
It offers a distinctly less paranormal alternative, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Okay, back to the fire. That seems like a pretty undeniable event, even if the cause is murky.
The fire definitely happened, yes. But it's interesting that the insurance company investigated and actually deemed it arson.
Arson, not an accident.
That was the insurance company's conclusion, yes.
Yep.
And Captain Gregson's insurance claim was reportedly considered fraudulent and wasn't paid out.
And Gregson was the guy who later helped Price with the excavation where the bones were found.
The very same.
Yeah.
His involvement in Price's conveniently timed dig does raise a few eyebrows for skeptics. Was the fire a genuine accident or something a little more deliberately dramatic to end the saga or cash in?
It certainly kept Borley and Price in the headlines.
It's all starting to sound a bit staged.
Yeah.
And those bones Price discovered. We already heard the gardeners thought it was a pig's jawbone.
Exactly. The sheer speed of the discovery, the almost too convenient presence of a pathologist and even a lawyer right there to verify the find,
Yeah.
and those pesky gardeners sticking to their pig jawbone story, it all casts a rather large shadow of doubt over Price's triumphant discovery narrative.
It really does. It's like every piece of the spooky puzzle, when you examine it closely, has a less ghostly, more human explanation lurking underneath.
That seems to be the trend when you apply critical scrutiny. And the story didn't even end there, did it? Even after Price passed away, the investigations continued.
People still looked into it. Oh, yes. The Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, and another group, the London Society for Psychical Research, both conducted their own independent investigations after Price was no longer around to, let's say, influence things.
And what did they conclude? Did they find the real ghosts?
Their conclusions were quite damning for the Borley legend, actually. They found no solid, verifiable evidence of any genuine supernatural events having occurred there.
Not at all.
Essentially, no.
Yeah.
They deemed Price's findings utterly unreliable due to his known background and likely trickery, and they strongly suggested he probably orchestrated or at least heavily exaggerated many of the most publicized incidents himself.
Wow. So the professional psychic researchers basically called shenanigans on the whole thing.
Pretty much, yes. They even managed to debunk some of the specific lingering ghostly phenomena that people still talked about, like that mysterious light sometimes seen in an upstairs window after the demolition.
Yeah. What was that?
Turned out, it perfectly coincided with the headlight of a regularly scheduled train passing by on a nearby track, reflecting in just the right way.
So not a spectral glow, but just the 8.15 Express to London.
Something like that. Mundane reality intruding on the ghost story. And remember that tale of a levitating brick seen during the demolition?
Oh, come on. A brick floating in midair. That always sounded a bit cartoonish to me anyway.
Right. Easily explained as just, well, falling debris. A brick tumbling during the messy process of tearing a building down. Nothing levitating about it.
So when you piece it all together, this incredible tale of England's most haunted house, the closer you look, the more it seems to crumble away like old plaster.
That does seem to be the case for many who've investigated it thoroughly without a prior belief in the haunting.
So the big question remains. Was Borley Rectory truly haunted by a lovesick, bricked-up nun, headless coachman, and a whole host of other spectral residents?
Or was it perhaps a carefully crafted and maybe wildly exaggerated series of events, fueled by old folklore, the power of suggestion, maybe loneliness and marital strife?
And perhaps quite a bit of theatrical deception by a certain fame-hungry ghost hunter looking to make a name for himself.
That's the enduring riddle of Borley, isn't it? It's a complex mix of possibilities.
It is. And despite all the debunking, all the skepticism, the rather unconvincing evidence when you pick it apart, the story itself just refuses to die.
Absolutely. The stories continue to captivate. The idea of Borley Rectory, even though it's long gone, still sparks the imagination.
No.
The site itself remains a point of interest for people fascinated by the paranormal.
It really does. That image of the gloomy rectory, the nun, the whispers, it's powerful stuff. So what do you, listening right now, make of the whispers and shadows of Borley Rectory?
A genuine peek into the paranormal, a glimpse of the other side.
Or maybe a fascinating cautionary tale about how belief, storytelling, and maybe a little bit of trickery can create a legend that echoes for decades.
It certainly gives you food for thought, whichever way you lean.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the enigma that was, or perhaps wasn't, Borley Rectory.
My pleasure. It's always a fascinating, if slightly murky, story to unpack.
If you enjoyed this exploration into the perhaps not so unexplained, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back with more deep dives into all sorts of intriguing topics.
Until next time.
Until our next delve into the unknown.